Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker in beautiful Chicago, Illinois. Actually, we don't do any events in Chicago. In beautiful areas close to Chicago, but not actually quite touching Chicago. Beautiful Chicagoland minus Chicago, as well as Paramount Social Club in Houston, Texas. Yeehaw! Hey, our Texas people, how you doing? This is where they would call back and they'd be like, "Hey, hi, I'm Bill. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm also a listener. We don't have any sponsors in Pennsylvania, Bill, so that's why we don't mention you guys. Anyways, hey, shout out to my Illinois peeps and my Texas peeps and Brandon, my co-host.
What up?
My co-hostess with the mostest.
Got a haircut this week.
I saw it. You guys are going to love this shit. Couple of quick updates for the mid-October CCG updates. Our number one sponsor, Chicago Charitable Games, shortened to CCG Poker. We had our first giveaway on last week's episode, which is episode 54, the Best of Las Vegas. That actually got a ton of comments on Facebook because people are like, "Oh, this is my favorite spot." So that was awesome. Please, Overlay peeps, keep that up. We loved it. And then also we did a on-air podcast
Flash giveaway. Yeah, that's good. And some guy came up to Brandon before he even got out. You tell a story because it was your story. Yeah, I mean, I roll up to Oaklawn 130. Truck's about 90% unloaded. I get out of my car and this dude just points at me and he's like, "Jamie Gold." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, man?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Jamie Gold, top." I was like, "Wow, man.
You get a free early bird seat.
You get a free early bird seat." And I mean, it was great to not even make it into the event. Event hadn't even started yet. And I already had guys cashing in their free early bird seats.
So the Overlay is now part of Chicago charity poker lore because one, Brandon saw a guy randomly walking the streets of Bridgeview with a Overlay t-shirt on. And he was just like, "Oh wow, we've made it," when a random homeless guy near the Resurrection Cemetery is wearing our t-shirt. If that doesn't scream success, I don't know what does.
Right. Random guys sporting your podcast on the road. I mean, granted, he probably bought that at Goodwill for $1, but I mean, hey, we still made it. Random guy wearing a Overlay shirt in Bridgeview, walking past the charity poker event, who had no idea that that's where it was from or where it was at or what we were doing. Yeah, that was kind of cool. I like that as well. And then again, it didn't even take that episode came out Thursday night at 7 p.m. I tried to do it during the NFL game on Thursday night, which actually worked quite well. So thank you to everyone who was scrolling around on the social medias and banged out the podcast after the NFL games. But the dude didn't even have 24 hours to figure out you know what I mean? The episode dropped on Thursday. I guess it was just close to 24 hours. It dropped at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And less than 24 hours, the guy was already in a CCG event going, "Give me my free seat," which is awesome. And just an FYI for everybody who listens, and now I can have some kind of legal recourse for episode 55, which is going to release very soon. Whenever this episode releases, the top promo is gone. Can't use the top promo anymore. So even if you come up to Brandon 5 years from now and be like, "Hey, I was listening to my hologram phone and I noticed that there was a quiz in this podcast," well, the contest is over now. So thank you. Then once this next episode drops, the previous episode's flash giveaway is gone. And I would wager money that the $20 early bird is still rolling.
100%.
For $20
100%.
2027.
100%. If anything in this world tells me if charity poker is still a thing, the early bird's still a thing.
I mean, we might have to change the buy-in to 0.000014 Bitcoin instead of $20 cash.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It'll still be rolling.
It'll still be there. It'll be great. Anyways, episode 55, we are going to discuss, now that we're about 5 minutes into the episode here, episode 55, Brandon and I were like, what's a good episode we can think about? And what we came up with, good or not, this is what the episode's about. High stakes poker and kind of a where are they now for the players from High Stakes Poker, right?
Yeah, love it.
I think, and then we were talking like, well, how do we do this? Like, what players are still active? What players are still relevant? What players are just
fell off the face of the earth,
gone, disappeared? Which guys are still trying to play, but they're just not really doing it anymore. So they're kind of like, that guy's just a bust out. He's trying to still do it, but he really doesn't have the game anymore, or he didn't evolve, or whatever the case may be. So this is kind of, and it was weird to think about that. High Stakes Poker, the first season was in, hold on,
January 2026, 2006.
January 16th, 2026. 2006, which is basically 15 years this January. So really it'll be 16 years coming up because we're in October now of 21. Like, that was more than 15 years ago. And like,
right, that's half my life ago.
That's right when CCG started. I think that High Stakes Poker, the first CCG event, which launched all of these things, the YouTube channel, podcast, Paramount, CCG, everything is connected. And what it's connected from, I think, is High Stakes Poker. Like, my brother and I used to watch High Stakes Poker. We would literally sit down like it was on
Game Show Network, right?
This is before, like, DVR was really a thing. Like, it was, and we would DVR it, but, like, we started out, like, you would, like, record it on the show, like, on your cable box, right? Like, through Comcast. And then we would watch High Stakes Poker, like, throughout the day. And, like, that was, like, our Saturday thing that we did, right? Like, it was awesome. Or you'd, like, pregame when you would go to home. This is when I was still going to home games. Like, we would pregame 26-year-old Ken. We would pregame, and we would have a beer or two, and we would watch High Stakes Poker. Like, it was the coolest shit. And then I just remember it was just a constant thing. Basically for 5 years until we hit 2011 and Black Friday and the fall of Full Tilt, right?
Yes.
Which probably could be our next episode. We should think about maybe doing that. Yeah. The fall of Full Tilt, which is kind of cool. But today it's about the positive side and High Stakes Poker, how cool of a show it was, how it has still affects the game today. I know I'm kind of going rogue on this on you because Brandon was like, let's just talk about the players and like who's relevant and who's not.
Yeah.
I kind of like that game when I think about it. That TV show really was huge. It was big. It made poker stars, not the game. It made these people stars in the world of poker, as well as like it changed the way the game was played.
And not only that, it changed the way the game was like recorded and aired too. Like if you remember ESPN in the early 2000s, like watching poker was brutal.
Yeah,
they didn't
hard.
Have hole cards and they didn't have announcers and they didn't, you were listening to like Jack Eiffel or whoever in the back.
I don't even know who Jack Eiffel is, but yes, like it was, you didn't really experience the game that you now
didn't consume it.
I think with what made poker boom in that time frame was the whole cam invention and then the World Series being on air for all that time and then High Stakes Poker being like you got to see these guys playing a cash game and like betting 20 grand in like a brick of like it was wild.
Yeah, so the brick of cash is obviously massive, but it's like more than that. It's just like the deal making and they're running it twice. Like I don't remember. Like I don't.
Nobody
think,
did that.
That might have.
That was like high stakes games only, and it was just the insider group of players that.
And you never saw it on.
We never
TV.
saw it on. Yeah, we never saw that.
None of us. On top of that, all you're good. But on top of that, all I forgot what I was going to say now, so I just cut you off, and you're going to forgive me. You're going to say it's going to be great, but I'm just going to try and make some up here and recover. On top of that, all. You had these guys that are joking around and you have the height of the online era, really, that's like making them rich because now they have access to a gazillion more fish. And then on top of it, by them playing on TV, that creates more fish for them to go make more money on. It's like a vicious circle of like the pros just getting rich. And it all started with like the pros producing the TV show to get the fish in to make the pros more rich. And it's just like this crazy bubble of a 5-year period of poker that you can really only talk about because people these days, like I was a little bit young, but like and you were maybe a little bit old. It was kind of in between us. That
the online part of it, I remember the TV part of it, and like the game itself exploding, which I really enjoyed, and that's part of what CCG became. And we're talking pre-horseshoe.
You were
here.
25.
It's 25.
Yeah, you were 25. I was 15.
26.
So I just missed out on the rush through it all. But I mean, I watched TV. It was like what I watched was poker on TV.
Yep.
Like my buddies would come over, we'd fire up, we'd use our dad's credit card, put $50 on party poker and watch high stakes poker. You can't watch it on YouTube because YouTube wasn't invented yet, guys. Like this is what
just let that sink in for a second.
Yes.
YouTube wasn't around yet. Wow.
So, it was, and it's really a bubble. You'll never find games like that whole era, and you'll never find the game being bigger and more people being exposed to it on TV.
But just
high stakes poker is really what took it over the top.
It did, and it made poker. And I think it was right in the. If this is the pandemic of the COVID era, like that was like the boom of poker, and like all of the things you just talked about for that 5-year period from 2006 to so many things had to happen that made it so crazy. But like that was the literal golden years of poker in the sense of online was jamming, card rooms were jamming, casinos were opening up card rooms in their places that hadn't had card rooms in 30 years, if ever. The big rooms, your Mirages, your Bellagios, they were massive. I remember going to Caesar's Palace and playing in the poker rooms there in the late 2000s, again, that's right in that time frame, 2006, 2007. CCG was just born. I mean, it was nuts. We could even talk about CCG back then. In 2007, which was the first year of events for CCG, which happened 1 year after High Stakes Poker, which I didn't actually realize until now. Back in those days, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brando, you were still mildly around. At least you were.
No, I was around. I was playing at 17.
The Bird had like 140, 150 players every time. Every time. There used to be a $40 late night at 9 o'clock, and we had a limit to 40 players at the Carlisle in 2007, 2008. And you would get 2 running tournaments that had 40 players each in them, capped out, 2 separate tournaments, like 2 separate pods. And they would just be playing the same line, same structure the whole way through, but it was completely separate tournaments because you couldn't finish an 80-person.
You couldn't finish an 80-person.
So you had to do it. And this is not that. This is before like poker players demanded to get more chips and better structures.
They were
and
just happy to play.
Blinds.
They just wanted to play. They wanted to experience what they were watching.
The OG Bird was like, I mean, a better structure. I mean, a good structure. It wasn't bad, but you got 3K in chips. There was no add-on. No break add-on, just $20 rips, and there'd be 150 players in it. And I'm not talking 150 entries. There were 15 tables of 10 players each, and then there were rebuys. And not rebuys, but, re-entries, getting back up, going back to registering, and sitting back down at somebody else's spot, and just fired up. Killing birds left and right. It was nuts.
Yeah,
Sit and goes. Sit and goes was a thing back then. You would get 25 to 30. What was the most sit and goes we ever did in one day at CCG in the heyday in that 2000 in that 5-year stretch?
I remember Pat Norris saying we did 45 sit and goes today.
It's fucking
and that
crazy.
Wasn't a Black Friday. That was just a day. That was just a day.
No, I mean, and then Black Friday was just created there. That was 2007 at the
people didn't care
Villa
about the
Park.
Rake, and
it was a different time.
It was. Pete. Why sit and goes don't work today is because you can't run something for $30 and get enough rake to make the charity money. The players have enough money. There's just not enough money to go around at $30. People didn't care back then. They just wanted to play, and if they won, it was a bonus.
Right.
And I mean, obviously that's great for people putting on the event, but it was also great for the players. Now you just don't get that. You get somebody, they look at a structure. Oh, not enough chips. Oh, too high a rake. Oh, this. It has to meet their specific. Everything's kind of
evolved.
Yeah, it's tightened up and it's different and it's different. It's good. I mean, people just it's different.
The game is better because of it.
It was like the unicorn years.
Yeah,
people didn't care about rake. They didn't care about.
It was the Wild West.
They didn't even want to win. They didn't even care about winning. Like
I just wanted to play.
I know that's like a crazy statement, but like
just wanted to play.
People showed up at CCG and gave 2 shits if they walked out of there plus 200 or minus 200. They just got to play poker for 12 hours like the guys on TV, and they had a blast.
Yep, he had some good stories to tell, and occasionally you would catch a winner. But even the winners you caught, I mean, the old sit and go. I think first place was what, $150.
130, 130 to first, 70 to second.
Wow, $30 buy-in.
Yep,
10 players sit and goes. Those were the days.
And they would chop it 100
every time, and then part of the chop was they got to keep their seats and play another one. Yeah, you just flip it, and go again. Anyways, high-stakes poker.
High-stakes poker, yeah, there you go.
So this, again, I mean, this is why this is not just a TV show. This is like this was the start of, this is one of the 3 pillars that we needed to make the poker boom happen. Moneymaker winning the WSOP main event, online poker becoming crazy big, and high-stakes poker. Those 3 things together are what really drove the golden years of poker between 2006 and 2011, pre-Black Friday of the fall of Full Tilt. Like, this is what it was. These players that played on high stakes became bona fide celebrities.
Right, and this is the show that really put them on the map because, yeah, sure, they were renowned within their own niche of being a high-stakes poker crusher.
But nobody knew that. Nobody knew how the games were played.
Nobody saw it.
And unless you got a, Chris Money, I can't even think of a person. Here you go. Unless you got a Sammy Farha who happened to make it all the way to the end of heads-up play of the main event. Like, there's a guy that crossed over to the high-stakes poker. He was a high-stakes poker player before that. Like, he didn't need the boom to happen. But, like, he was, like, unless that happened when we were watching the WSOP, like, we didn't know any of these guys existed. Some of these players never even played tournaments. They only played tournaments later because it was like part of the marketing and the branding, right? Like you changed it up, but like,
and they were good, and you can just all of a sudden spend $1 million or $1,000 into $1 million.
Now the prize pools of tournaments were so large that it was worth playing.
Right.
Anyways, back to high stakes poker and how wonderful it is. High stakes poker. What was like some of the first? What are the first names that you thought of?
So, I mean, I just instantly, and it like pains me to actually say this, but when I think of high stakes poker, like I just think of like Daniel Negreanu and that stupid bull haircut in his early 20s with the blonde hair, the long blonde bull haircut hair, and the little earring.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you think of him, and then you obviously think of Phil Ivey.
Yep.
And then you really think of Doyle Brunson too.
Doyle was that was big for him.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he's one of the ones that you would never even know existed if you were an outsider in Munster, Indiana, watching, playing on Party Poker. I never knew that guy existed, but he's been a crusher since the 70s.
Yeah.
And, finally in 2006, he makes a name for him, and now he's Texas Dolly, and he's got a cowboy hat, and everybody knows that his hand was 10 deuce, and everybody knows him when you talk about poker.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. Like, it was great.
Yep. And then, I mean, we can keep going. Obviously, Tom Dwan, he made his huge name for himself. I think he came a little bit later. But he was a huge part of the show and ended up being, the face of the show, High Stakes Poker. But, I mean, you had what? You had Sammy Farha, Freddie Deeb. Then you had Patrick Antonius and Gus Hansen.
Gus Hansen. I have a great Gus Hansen story.
Well,
in the beginning, they were still using some of those really big old school poker player names, like your Doyle Brunsons, your Todd Brunsons, his son. Johnny Chan was a first season.
Chan, there you go. With the lucky orange.
Ali Alezra was another first season guy. Antonio Estefandari. I still can't say that name. Sammy Farha.
So if you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you think of like this, like season 1 cast,
Barry Greenstein,
it's a lot of old guys. It's older guys, and it's because the game hadn't yet like boomed.
Phil Hellmuth, who was an old player, a veteran player, without like. Obviously, he was much younger but a lot of those guys were older. But like, this is all. I'm looking at. I finally found a list of the first season.
Remember, Negreanu was Kid Poker. He was the one young guy.
Danny Negreanu. Yeah.
Him and Ivey were the young guns. And besides that, it was older because the game still hadn't gone through the progression of like turning into a 21 to 28-year-old person's game.
Right.
And like, obviously, as we get through high stakes, it ends up being the young guns that take over the game.
They come back.
It's almost like a passing of the torch.
Right.
Like
that you literally watch. Yeah.
Yeah. You watch the game turn younger and younger and younger through high stakes poker, which is following the lead of, mainstream poker. So, yeah, I mean, do you want to start ripping into some dudes and where they're at?
Phil Ivey wasn't even on the show until season 3.
Yeah.
Let's
just wasn't relevant yet.
He was. He just, or maybe he didn't realize how much stuff was in there. Let's start with the OG. First season, number one guy, probably Doyle Brunson, who became one of the most famous faces of poker in general. But I don't know what happened. Where's Doyle Brunson now?
I mean, he's like 85 and retired. He might be 90.
Yeah, he's 88 right now.
Yeah, he's 88. So I mean. I remember, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. I think, he was riding around the WSOP with his scooter. And he said, this is my last main event, guys. Like, it's just too taxing. I mean, these poker tournaments aren't for the unhealthy, let alone the 88-year-olds of the world. Like, they almost are just drawing dead at the elements. He can get dealt aces every hand. He ain't going to win. He can't last that long.
Yep. But his last tournament, his last WSOP bracelet was in 2005, and it was a no limit hold'em shorthanded, 6 players per table. It's
actually really impressive that he banked one. I mean, that's only 16 years ago, so he's 72?
That's old.
And playing in the big. I mean, 05 is literally the biggest fields of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
I think that's the Jamie Gold era. I think that Jamie Gold's 05. So I mean, I think that's a $12 million for first main event. That's all the biggest fields ever.
Wow.
So he's
got 2 no limit hold'em. He's got 2 main event winners, 76 and 77. He won back to back. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
those. But you're right. He's basically at this point
he's an
now,
old school grinder that turned. That's his new school is 06 poker.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the end of his career and passing the torch over. He put the game in a good spot.
Play. Yeah, it was so neat to watch him play, and just in general, I loved Doyle Brunson. I just thought he was and everybody, every kid, I shouldn't even say kid, every person that wanted to be a poker player, what book did you read first?
Yeah, Super System.
System. That's just what you read. I don't even know when that book was. It's the first book I bought on this is so long ago. I don't even think I got it. It was the Amazon wasn't even a thing. I think I bought it from BarnesandNoble.com or Borders.com. I was straight up Borders.com.
When it was only a bookstore.
That's even better. I think this one I bought at Borders, and I still have my original Super System. You know what's even crazier? I have the first tournament that I ever played in that I won. I got first place. And the envelope that it was a home game, and the envelope that first place money was in, I still have as a bookmarker in my Super System book, which is sitting in my office currently right now, 17 years later. That's crazy. It's cool.
It's funny because I wonder if that book's any good right now. Is it that outdated where it's
I haven't read it
useless?
In 15, 16 years, so I honestly couldn't tell you. Everything now is about hand ranges and different things. But anyways, let's get back to the high stakes poker peeps. Who else we got on there? All right.
Johnny Chan. Let's keep going with the old school guys.
I was looking at Johnny Chan, another old school, original WSOP back in the 80s. Before, when it was on TV, but it wasn't really on TV because I remember watching those with my dad. And it was cool. We would it was on ESPN. It was the Ocho back then. It was watching fucking dodgeball tournaments now. It was wow, poker on TV? No shit. Oh, it's a World Series event? Awesome. That was the only, if your family played poker, you were the small section of the planet who would actually care about the World Series. And if you actually watched, you were even a smaller, nobody watched that shit. There's no whole cams. They would occasionally do when there was an all-in, there'd be a really shitty graphic. You see it in Rounders, that scene where, Johnny Chan's in it. But that was another one. What's Johnny Chan doing now there, Brando?
I don't know. I don't know much about Johnny Chan.
Oh, he lives in Houston now. He has a Johnny Chan's room, Chan's 88, which is the year he won the main event, is 1988.
Smart.
It's a pretty cool name. It's Chan's 88 poker room.
He's still relevant in the Houston poker scene, which is one of the biggest poker scenes in the country.
Yeah, I would say yes. It's top 3. Vegas. When you talk about big poker spots right now, Texas and Houston is definitely one of them. I mean, it's Vegas, Houston, and I would say those are the top two. I
would say Houston's ahead of Vegas.
It's possible. The tournament scene right now, outside of the World Series week, which is this 6-7 weeks of the year, you're right. There's probably more action in Texas right now than there is anywhere else, which is bananas. It's crazy.
It's pretty sweet.
Anyways, Johnny Chan still playing, definitely hanging out in his own room, which is in Houston, Texas, which I believe he's from. I think he's from Texas in general.
Okay.
I think. I'm not really sure. I guess I could click on his name, find out. Obviously, he was not born in Texas, but I think he lives in Texas now. Oh, yeah. Chan moved with his family in 1962 from China to Hong Kong, then in 1968 to Phoenix, Arizona, and later in 1973 to Houston, Texas, where his family owned restaurants. So when he was 21, Chan dropped out of the University of Houston, did not know that, where he was majoring in hotel and restaurant management, and moved to Las Vegas to become a professional gambler. Yep. His first live casino experience was before he was 21. During a visit to Las Vegas at the age of 16, Chan managed to buy into a cash game, allegedly turning $500 into $20,000 in one night before losing the whole $20,000 the next day. If that is not a perfect, fantastic poker player bio Wikipedia page, son of a gun. He won 87 and 88. He became the first foreign national to win the main event. But wow. Yeah, you know. He hasn't really done much since then. He hasn't won a bracelet since obviously 2005. But he starred in a lot of other TV shows. Poker After Dark he was on. Did a lot of other cool shit too.
Plus, so there's another one that he was already popular in the poker world.
He was kind of on his way out. He was on his way out.
He was over the hump when the poker was
out of his prime. Right. Definitely not. Definitely not up and coming. He had already been there, done that, and he was just kind of banking a little bit on those earlier days. All right, what else we got? Who else we got for season 1? Old school players. Freddie Deeb. Whatever happened to Freddie Deeb? He's a guy I definitely remember from those shows. I remember Freddie Deeb like early on. I remember him.
Yeah, now remember there was that episode where he got accused of going south, and that was
again not something I ever really knew. Because I feel like unless you were a hardcore casino player and you played limit poker, this is no limit. Like in Illinois at that time, you couldn't play no limit poker. You had to play limit poker. There was no limit. And I don't mean that as a double entendre. It's legitimately there was no limit hold'em game spread in Illinois. You had to go to Trump resorts over in Indiana.
Illinois?
Yep.
Or Indiana. Yeah.
But Freddie Deeb.
Freddie Deeb, he's kind of on the way out now, too. I was looking at his Hendon Mom a little earlier. I mean, he plays, I think he might live in Vegas. I think he just grinds the semi-big, not nosebleeds, but, stuff to make a living on, $25, $50, or $10, $25 cash games.
Yeah, after his high stakes days, kind of like, or during the high stakes days in the heyday of poker, he did win a $50,000 horse event for a little over $2.3 million, 2.2.
Oh yeah, that's his biggest his biggest earning. Yeah, but I mean, I think now, I did see he played like the 2020 WSOP online series and stuff, and even the 2021 online series. So I mean, he's still around. Just trying to make, now he's almost back. It's gone full circle where they're back. They've went through the roller coaster of becoming these celebrities where now they're not so much washed up, but the game's changed. It's different. And
right.
It's like an old school guy trying to stay relevant.
Well, it's just
like Nicolas Cage, Is Nicolas Cage, is he a good actor anymore? Who knows?
It's just like the idea of the poker rooms and poker tournaments in general. Like the players have gotten better and they want better structures. Same things kind of happen. These guys were kind of like the original guys that could just beat up, and the difference between a pro like Johnny Chan and the average poker player who was used to playing, at his kitchen table, that was such a big gap. Whereas it was a now,
huge edge.
Like the pro, I'm air quoting the pro. There's so many pros now that that gap is much shorter, right?
Right, and there's a whole bunch of people in between. Even the guys that aren't polished like the pros are still good.
Right.
I mean,
they're better. They're significantly better.
like I'm not good like a pro good and no limit hold 'em at all. Like I'll be the first to tell you I'm kind of fishy. But even for being kind of fishy, I'm good. You know, It's weird.
Yep.
And like you didn't have that. Like if you were a fish, you were a donkey fish. Like those guys back. The average player in 2004 would sit at a table today, and to everyone would be like, "Man, this guy's terrible." Like even the bad guys would be like, "Holy cow, this guy's bad." You just don't get that anymore,
All right, next up on our list from season 1, Heroes, Eli Elezra. That guy was awesome. I loved him. I thought he was super cool.
He's still relevant today.
Yeah, I mean, he looks a lot older. I mean, 15 years later.
He plays in the EPTs. He plays in the Poker After Dark. He's on TV. If you ever watch Poker Go, you're going to see Eli Elezra.
Mm-hmm.
He's got silver, gray, white hair now.
Yeah, but he looks older.
He does, but hey, clearly still doing good and crushing it and able to, adjust his game if he's still relevant after 15 years. Speaking of another guy, what about Sammy Farha?
Sammy Farha is another guy that
was he on season 1?
Sammy Farha. Hold on.
Because when you think of high stakes poker, you think of him in a suit, talking smack with a cigarette in his mouth.
You think of Sammy Farha. You think of Doyle Brunson. You think of Danny Negreanu. You think of Phil Hellmuth. You think of Eli Elezra. I mean, those are the players that the OG, Freddie Deeb. All those guys were big cash game players that were big personalities that were fun to watch, and that's why they were on TV, right? Like, it's probably the reason Phil Hellmuth. I mean, he still wins a lot too, so I guess there's that. But like, maybe he is as good as he thinks he is. It's possible.
Well, he definitely was that good back then.
He was.
I mean, like he was so far ahead of everybody that like.
But like Eli Elezra, those were so much fun to watch, and Sammy Farha, like these guys were like what we all wanted to aspire to be. Like it was just so cool watching them like gamble and just chuck bricks of money into the pot and like bluffing with nothing, and like that. I also think it was nuts.
That pre this show, that would have looked completely degenerate. Like these guys are sick and need AA. Like they're not AA, but they need Gamblers Anonymous. They need help. Yeah, they need a problem. But the show just took all that negativity about like degenerate gambling and kind of like reversed it. Like you didn't think of like, wow, this guy just lost an $800,000 pot. Maybe he can't pay his bills. Like that never once crossed your mind because they're smiling, they're laughing. It's I'll see you tomorrow. It's guess I'm going to pull out 250,000 more. Like they were just such ballers.
Yeah, it was awesome.
You just didn't even think twice that like these guys just don't have unlimited money. And I mean, we can transition into a lot of the full tilt guys, which we're probably going to do soon. And they really did have unlimited money. They were getting paid so much money that it was just like, oh, well, good news. Full Tilt has 74,000 cash games running right now because I'm going to get another $1 million check from them if I just punt a buy into Eli Elezra. So I think that's kind of the next phase of you had all of the old school guys.
Original grinders, players that were playing all the time, that played all the backroom games, played when poker wasn't really like cool. It wasn't a thing. Like it wasn't like, man, I hate to say poker. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like it
wasn't mainstream.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream. Like it was just like this like thing that people did. It would be like, I'm trying to think of something now. It would be like maybe in the 2000s, maybe when like, oh, I'm a professional Nintendo player. Like that ain't a thing.
Or like Frisbee golf player.
Right. Like now they're much more mainstream. They're much more socially, people are aware of these games. Like poker was not a game that everybody played. If you asked any person on the street today, I think if you asked 10 people, you could probably get at least 5 or 6 of them that could tell you what hands beat what. And I'm just talking about random strangers. Be like, what's better, 2-pair or full house? And like,
or like, what's Texas Hold'em? They'd be like, oh, I know Texas Hold'em.
I know what that is.
2 cards. I saw it on TV.
Right, exactly. It's part of what people would they just recognize the game. Like those were the old school guys that did it before TV was a thing. And then let's get into the players that started to play like once they were really. We forgot one old guy, Barry Greenstein.
Oh yeah,
Barry Greenstein was another player that was just
on the river.
Yeah, I mean, he was just an old school grinder that played because he needed money to pay for like his kid's surgery or something.
I don't remember.
I don't know. He was like a Robin Hood-esque type fever where he was stealing from the rich to give to the poor, except he was just considering himself mostly the poor part. But that's fine. It was still a good story.
He's still around too. He's still around playing. He's traveling the world playing.
You don't see him as much on TV, but definitely, he's definitely still around, which is cool.
He also looks old.
Who else we got?
I think we should go into the full tilt poker.
I want to do the hybrids. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's do the full tilt guys.
I mean, these are the guys that obviously full tilt invested money into, thinking that this is the new age of poker. This is the new. These guys were kind of younger to. I wouldn't say, they were like 25 to 35, and they weren't so much 50,
Right.
They weren't 50 and 60 and been there and done that in the 80s. They were like they were 20 something when Moneymaker won. You had Tom Dwan, obviously the face. Then you had Howard Lederer, Chris Ferguson.
Forgot about, and what was Howard Lederer's sister's name?
Annie Duke.
Annie Duke. Yep, go ahead. Keep going.
Annie Duke. You had Jennifer Harmon, who was one of the up-and-coming. I mean, like Kathy Liebrecht was always like the old school best woman player, and then you had Jennifer Harmon come, and she was like the
new school best
new
player.
Age, the new sexy girl. That like the Tom Dwan of the females is her, like the aggressive young gun style. Which then obviously turned into Vanessa Selps, but that's not getting into the end of high stakes poker. We're going to save her for last. But who else was a full tilt?
I mean, Phil Ivey.
Phil Ivey.
Phil Ivey didn't really show up until like the third season. Your Gus Hansons, your Patrick.
So that's
Antonio's.
It right there.
What was his name?
Esfandiari. I don't know if he was on full tilt.
He was. He was on first.
Was he?
Yeah, he was on the first season. So. He was probably early, but he's still like one of those guys. He's not like a Phil Nagano. He's not a Phil Hellmuth or Dan Negreanu, where I feel like he was a super
big name.
Not a notable player, but yes, like Negreanu was a big name even before like online poker. Like granted, he was the new face.
Negreanu was the face of Poker Stars. I mean, like
correct.
Full Tilt had 15 pros. Poker Stars had
just him,
Dan Negreanu,
which is great.
And it's a pretty good face for a company, to be honest.
I mean, he's made a lot of money playing poker, and he's still doing it today. Still making vlogs, still sponsored online content. I think he just lost the Poker Stars stuff maybe last year, within the last 2 years. I mean, he was the face of Poker Stars forever. I think now he's doing like WSOP. GG. That's right, GG Poker. It's crazy. Who else we got? Who are we missing?
I don't know. So of these full tilt guys, I mean, Howard Lederer, he's disappeared forever.
Gone. He ain't never
with the allegations. Back. Ferguson showed up like randomly in like a 2018 or 2019 WSOP, and everyone made huge, like it was a huge news story. But he faded into the wind with that.
Right.
Patrick Antonius still plays. Definitely not the name that. Same with Gus Hansen. I mean, those guys are around. I mean, I'm sure they're playing.
They were always just cash game players. I feel like.
Yes.
I'm sure they're still playing. We just don't see them as much, and maybe they're just not as charismatic anymore. Or people don't want to see them anymore. Or maybe maybe they're not playing as wild as they used to.
The news just doesn't care about them because there's new guys that are more relevant
doing the same shit.
That happens.
Like everybody, like back in the day when Gus Hansen would just he'd just fire bullets, just bullet after bullet after bullet after bullet, and like that aggro. Like super aggressive play that
loose aggro,
like just didn't even define. Like he was the outlier of the loose aggressive players.
Yeah, like hyper lag.
3 or 4 betting people with like 6-4 off, like
and then just pounding the flop and pounding the turn. You'd be sitting there with ace jack on jack time 4, and it's like I have no idea.
That got to be less cool in the sense of we saw it so often that like. That wasn't cool anymore, Yeah. He was the first guy in the MLB to take steroids and just hit monster home runs. And then now basically that's what everybody does. So it's not really cool anymore. Now you're just an old steroid guy rather than,
Now it's like, I'm going to not
everybody
take
does
steroids. Yeah, you're going to go
now you got to be like Negreanu, much more vegan and plant-based stuff.
So I think that's kind of I think we should probably hit on some of like Phil Ivey. We're talking about, he was pretty much unanimously designated as like the best player in the world for a while.
For a long
from like 2008.
Then you get the other Phil.
2015. Then you got Hellmuth. Hellmuth
is
still
other Phil.
Oh, Phil Locke. Unabomber. So he's still around, and I think he's married to Jennifer Tilly, right?
Jennifer Tilly from Chucky's Bride.
I
think he still plays. He's just not as He's not as popular anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're still around. They're still playing the nosebleeds, the high-stakes stuff. And, I mean, they're still on TV. And
still
Jennifer
playing.
Tilly plays in Poker After Dark with, like, John Brown-Belair. And she's on every single show. So, I don't know if she's got some contract. But, you know, you see her around a lot.
People like watching her play.
And then you got Hellmuth. Somehow, White Magic made it through the entire poker boom. And he's still relevant.
Still booming.
Good. And... you know, he works with Aria and high stakes poker, and I think he made the final table of some sort of mixed game, $10,000 buy-in at the WSOP. I think the final table is today. It'll be obviously over by the time it airs, but he's going for bracelet like 16.
Yeah, it's like 7-card stud, I think.
Yeah, like a 10K 7-star stud. That sounds about right.
That's what it is.
So, I mean, you know, he's still alive and well, and he's very much in the poker news.
Him and Negreanu are by far,
they made it.
They are the pinnacle of, like, they were both famous before the boom.
Too,
they were huge during the boom. They still made money without the boom, and now we're in the second boom, and they're still at the top of that list of poker celebrities. They're
more like ambassadors of the game. They're more huge than celebrities. They're bigger than the game.
They're the Babe Ruths of poker, right?
Correct. Even if people come around and say they're better, like it doesn't matter. It's always
always be compared to one of those two. Like if a new guy comes out and rips off 8, 9, 10 bracelets, just be like, well, is he the next? You know,
is he the next
Phil Hellmuth?
Right.
Phil, Negreanu. I mean, Phil's kind of like the loud one, and Negreanu's more of the I'm very smart and kind of more reserved poker player. So there's kind of two different types there, and I think that's why they're the two kind of faces where it's like, all right, which one do you want to be? You want to be the crazy loud guy at the tournament, or do you want to be the more reserved, I'm just really quite good and confident? And you know what I mean? Like, I think it's two different types of people. I tend to be both at different times. Depends on when you catch me.
Very much are. Very bipolar.
You can be very loud. I can be very quiet. Depends on how the night's going.
And Negreanu's more of like the politics, but the social media, the online, the streaming, and the Twitch, and the putting out content. Whereas, you know, Phil Hellmuth's still like, I'm going to go through my day, and it's kind of the life of the Dan Bilzerian life. You see Negreanu. I'm sorry, you see Phil Hellmuth like flying to Golden State Warriors game and hanging out with Steph Curry, and going to the Aria Suites and gambling and playing in backyard games, and it's kind of like the baller life, and he's showing that off, and he's still winning, and he's pretty cool. He's grown on me a lot.
Yeah, I like
now
him.
That he's older. I thought he was just a prick.
I don't mind Dan Negreanu too. I still watch most of his vlogs. I normally wait until after the WSOP's over, and then when I'm missing poker on TV, then I'll watch the vlogs. And I also like the way that Dan Negreanu breaks down his hands and his thought process when he's playing. I feel like I gained something from that, but it's not so into like the hand by hand play that like I can actually enjoy watching it from just an enjoyment standpoint, right? Like you can do a little bit of both. So it's pretty cool. Anybody else that we're missing on high stakes poker? I'm sure there is.
We could talk about Tom Dwan. Tom Dwan, he was the face of it, and then he disappeared, went to Macau. Now he's back.
Why was it that like Phil Ivey never really disappeared after the Full Tilt breakdown? Or should this be on the fall of Full Tilt?
No, he did. He did.
Not to the extent of like a Chris Ferguson or Howard Lederer or Tom Dwan.
Those guys were more. There was some guys that were guilty by association. Then there was some guys that were like in on the Ponzi scheme, and I think those guys were more of like the people that knew they knew what was going on and they continued to get rich. That's like your Howard Lederer and Chris Ferguson. Right. Where like Phil Ivey was just like he was just crushing those games, and they were using him as a face,
right?
But he wasn't in on the back behind the scenes stuff of people getting scammed for millions of dollars.
He didn't know.
I think that's the difference.
Right.
Correct.
He thought it was legitimate in the sense of like if people cashed out, they cashed out. Where it wasn't like, oh no, they don't have
he got a $10 million royalty check. That was legit what he earned. Right. Not like, hey, we're just going to start peeling off here for all these guys under the table.
Yeah. Yep. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Any big names that we're missing that I can't think of? I'm going through the list here. Mike Matusow. He was a season 2 guy.
He's good. Built for TV poker player.
He's perfect.
Is he
for
that
TV
good?
Poker.
No. Is he that much action? No. Is he tight? Kind of. He's boring.
But when he's in the spotlight, though, he's pretty fun to watch.
And you either loved Mike or hate Mike, and I was one of the guys that loved him.
I loved him. I thought he was hilarious.
You ever read his book?
No.
It's called like Check Raising the Devil. I mean, back in those era, like in the early 2000s, late 90s, he had a big drug problem and like pills and stuff, not like heroin or whatever, but like pills and stuff like that. And, he was grinding, going broke, no bankroll management. He knew he was good, but then couldn't ever beat himself, It was always himself that got in the way of him being a millionaire. And he kind of like overcame those demons and stuff, and the poker boom kind of helped him get out of there. So he's a cool guy. I mean, I follow on Twitter now. He's a little opinionated when it comes to politics, but I mean,
it's okay. He's using his platform for. I mean, Daniel Negreanu's the same way. He
is. They're on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Correct.
But they both are.
They both use
using their platform
soapbox, to preach. Anyways, I think that's going to kind of do it for the high stakes episode. I just feel like. I think it's true. I think high stakes poker and the players that were on it and the game itself and the way it was taped and the way it was talked about and the way that we got to these like astronomically stupid numbers for one hand of poker to be like, oh my God, there's a $700,000 pot. Like that shit was bananas. Like it was so cool and it was so crazy and it was something that we could never imagine happened in real life. And it did. And it was awesome. Like it was part of what made poker. Yes, it's very cool to think about. I can join I could be the Chris Moneymaker. I could saddle my way in on an 80-cent tournament and win millions of dollars is awesome. But like this was like we're like, no, not only that, but these guys are raising pre-flop $30,000, Like that's nuts. They're playing for there was so much money on that table, and if it was ever actually in play or not, nobody really knew, but it was very cool to watch and see those go. Just these wild ass giant hands. I mean, in season 5, Tan Dewan won the biggest pot, $919,000, $920,000 to be played. No side deals or multiple runs. Dewan won with 3 queens, beating Barry Greenstein's 2 pair, aces and queens. Peter Eastgate was the original raiser with ace king. It's crazy. Crazy.
I remember that hand.
Dewan called with king, queen of spades.
Yep, and then flop was like 2 spades and a queen and 2 spades.
Yep.
And I think Barry Greenstein.
They got it all in on the flop
once.
And this time Greenstein again wanted to run only once, but offered to take some of their money back, which Dewan turned down, stating, "Sorry, no." Commentator Gabe Kaplan noted that the comparison was earlier when Greenstein would not run it twice. At this point, it was almost exactly an even race. Turn was a queen and the river was a 7, so Dewan won the $920,000 pot. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that hand. I remember Dewan being like twice, and Dre's like, "I only go once, but I'll take $200,000 back." And then Dewan was instantly like, "No," and you can tell it was a little bit of an ego thing.
Yep.
I didn't realize that he didn't run it twice earlier. That's a cool backstory, but and then just turn a queen, and hey, you got 2 outs, bud. Good luck.
I mean,
let's go.
Cool as shit. But I mean, that exact scenario there where it was like these deal makings and like, it's funny. Now we almost have to tell people, hey, pal, this isn't high stakes poker. You can't do that. This is a casino. It's an $800 pot. You're not going to run it twice.
So normal.
You can't take it back.
Knows about
it. You're not going to do like selling off action to another player. Like we never realized you could. They had thought of so many like prop bets and right. Like it was so cool. It revolutionized the game to make that a normal thing. Where before, I mean, Texas Hold'em was barely like the number 1 poker game played.
And it was the only poker I ever got excited about watching. You like get excited, like I don't know what's going to happen, and somebody's going to get buried, and like everyone's going to be laughing.
It was different. It was a different game. Like watching the World Series was cool, but it was like there's an end game, and like it's like a season long thing where you're watching several episodes up until the final table, and then blah blah blah. Like it was different. And there's more all ins, and like, do I call the all in? Do I not? Cash games, obviously, for everybody knows, like they were different, right? Like it was more of the pre-flop stuff happened, and there was different betting and check raising. It was very interesting. It was super fun to watch.
Fancy and
we watched
out of the norm.
A lot of high stakes poker. I remember watching high stakes poker over and over, and it looks like there were 3 seasons before like the first year was even done. Like they just ripped through week after week after week after week of high stakes poker, and it was It was great. I recommend if you want to go back and you're into watching some poker content like high stakes poker, that's what I would watch. I would watch that, and I don't watch old
high stakes episodes.
They do
on YouTube and Poker Go.
You can 100% watch it on Poker Go, which I have Poker Go. It's great. Like, it's cool. Like, there's a lot of fun stuff on it. It's good content. So if you're a poker player, it's worth I think it's like $50 for the year.
Yeah, it's $9.99 a month or $50 for the year.
I think I paid $50 for the year because I was like, fuck it, at least this way I'm priced into watching it. Otherwise, I just watch it one time and then I never watch it again. At least if I pay for the year, I'm like, man, I gotta use some of it. I gotta use this more than just one time.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's gonna do it for episode 55 of the Overlay High Stakes Poker. And what were like those old timey shows where it was like high stakes poker behind the scenes? Not that we know anything about behind the scenes, but it's kind of like one of those, right? Just like the importance of high stakes poker and the where are they now, which I think is neat to think about. Some of those guys that were like these massive poker stars were just like poof, gone.
Yep.
It's pretty interesting.
It is really interesting. I mean, it's like thinking about actors. It's like, Tom Cruise and all these Brad Pitt. Where are they now? I mean, some of them just fade off and you get new guys.
They just gone. You get some
of them some people like John Travolta, they last forever. They're going to be doing movies.
But even then, there were times where John Travolta was just gone. He was just gone, making movies like Face Off. Face Off was great. Ugh. Anyways, thanks for listening. Catch us next time. Hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions. If you're out in the CSOP, if you're out at the WSOP in Vegas right now in 2021, or any WSOP at any point in time, future or past, hit us up on on Twitter at the Overlay Pod. Brandon, you got anything else for us?
Yeah, $1,000 free roll coming up at the end of this month for you content people that are paying attention to us. We're thinking the 30th. Yeah, we're going to just tell them it's the 30th.
CCG
Saturday.
players, first announcement of the free roll for the 1K subscribers on YouTube to 1K free roll will be Saturday the 30th at 1 p.m. at the Bridgeview Community Center. So
free money. Come get it.
All you got to do is be a subscriber. You don't even have to be a subscriber before a certain date. However, you do need to prove that you're a subscriber. So we will explain that in another episode. But
bring a device.
If you're not in there 100%, download YouTube because it's great. You should be watching YouTube just for the poker content alone. And other than that, there's great stuff on YouTube. I can't even think all the cool shit on there. But one of the cool shits on there is CCG Poker. Thanks for listening. Catch us next time. Bye, everybody.
Farewell.